Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As I was licking away at my toilet seat trying to infect myself with coronavirus, I realised just how much I missed Argent Dawn, and especially that delightful bunch of total window lickers that call it home. And as soon as I'd sniffed enough glue to tolerate it, I jumped straight back into the roleplay. And in no time at all, I found myself marinated in total bullshit. So I was presented with two options. I could either gun down a small child, or I could present a list of my top 5 roleplay pet peeves. The things which just marginally increase your blood pressure, but when combined with the others, slowly make you want to snap. The criteria for this list is fairly simple. For it to appear on the list, it cannot be too irritating as to make you switch off entirely, but it just has to be irritating enough to make you cringe and uneasy when you come across it. We're starting off very minor with number 5. Disgusting transmogs. Now I, as well as much of the rest of Argent Dawn, have an IQ of single digits, and so therefore I don't have much of an imagination. So your in-character game model is going to be a large proportion of how I'm picturing your character. Now I'm not asking for much in this area. I'm not asking for high fashion or transmogs which transcend beauty itself, but I am asking not to have to stare for 30 minutes at the fashion equivalent of the Columbine school shooting. Now, with the transmog department, a number of things can go wrong, but perhaps the most common is having a set which just doesn't match at all. I mean, if you look at some transmogs around Stormwind, for instance, many of them look like they've been muddled together in some kind of Malaysian sweatshop. The sad thing is it doesn't really take much to ruin a perfectly good transmog. Often it's just one piece of their armour that's making it look horrible. It might just be disgustingly coloured trousers, or a headpiece that makes it look like you've got a giant tumour sticking out of your forehead. Another common mistake in this area is having ridiculously oversized armour. I can't begin to tell you how difficult it is to take mostly warriors and paladins seriously when they're walking around with total aesthetic war crimes on their shoulders and head. Of course, the same also applies to weapons, as it's incredibly off-putting to roleplay with someone that has on their back a sword the size of Dwayne Johnson's erection. And you'll forgive me, but I just don't care if it's high fantasy. You just look ridiculous. For number 4, I'd just like you to picture yourself in a bar. You wander up to the counter and usher over the barman. The barman turns around and says,
"Hello there! How may I provide you with excellent customer service this evening?"
Yes, at number 4 I've decided to put bartender roleplayers. How many times have I gone into the Blue Recluse or the Pig and Whistle only to be served by a rotting corpse with glowing blue eyes, who of course is always trying to settle down into a new life. Now I'm sure you think that explanation is cast iron, and I apologise for not lapping up the absolute genius story arc right away, but sadly I just don't see a walking undead machine of death designed by the Lich King is in need of a side hustle. And what the fuck is with all the demon hunters becoming bartenders? Now, I'm not one to judge, and I imagine that hunting demons is quite a taxing profession, but then I imagine there's probably more relaxing things to do than serving pissheads lager until 4 in the morning. And thank goodness that so many commanders and so many archmages are also part-time bartenders. Their time definitely isn't going to be better spent doing anything else. Now I'm going to bring out the snob in me for number 3, and I'm not proud of it. But at number 3, I have people that ignore the game's lore. Now I specifically choose the word ignore rather than don't know the lore. People that don't know the lore just haven't learnt it yet. But if you know a piece of lore and disregard it because it doesn't match the character that you want to create, then you should be forcibly sterilised and or euthanized. Now this type of highly aggressive cancer can hit you from a number of different angles, but possibly the most common one is when someone decides to roleplay an archmage or a commander but they still want to get rampantly penetrated in their garrison during some erotic roleplay, and no one really, besides me, wants to have sex with anyone above the age of 60. So to increase their character's sexual market value, they make their character's age around 20, so then they're peak breeding stock. Of course, in doing so, they ruin every ounce of logic not only in the game, but also in general. The other most common example is, of course, the noble guilds that assume that the entire alliance is based on some kind of feudal system of vassalage, where everyone is vying for control of different portions of land, much like in Game of Thrones. And actually that's where many of these problems emerge, is when people are trying to shoehorn in some kind of external inspiration that they found when it doesn't fit. But they just make it fit, because fuck it, that's why. Now, not many people are guilty of number 2. But when you do find that they are guilty of it, you don't want to roleplay with that person for much longer. Yes, number 2 is unnecessarily long emotes. Indeed, out in the squalid world of Argent Dawn, some heroic figures seek to elevate the culture of the server by spreading their Dickensian writing to the masses. I mean, just look at this absolutely stellar piece of prose, soon to be included in the Argent Dawn audiobook, now on Audible.
Furzer raises his nettily eyebrows to an elevated position, the age lines of his brow furrowing intensely. Simultaneously, his
well-crafted, freckled nose twitches instinctively to the woman's response.
His silky
azure gaze scopes the woman from head to toe in a manner which suggests a degree of pleasant interest.
To indicate his pleasure, a baritone, cool-tone accent burst from his gaping mouth, each syllable lovingly intonated,
as though the burly paragon of masculinity
was thinking carefully of his articulation. Pleasure to meet you.
So in summary, he smiled and said pleasure to meet you. Now what's happened here is that you've deep-throated a thesaurus and want to show off your knowledge of synonyms to the rest of Argent Dawn. But the only thing that you're actually showing off is the fact that you have several extra chromosomes. Having emotes, which sometimes stretch into several paragraphs to describe very little things, does nothing to further anyone's immersion. All it does is make roleplay with you an agonising experience, whilst everyone waits for 10 minutes for you to write that you've nodded, and to attach several adjectives to it that makes you look deep and creative. And finally, the last and probably most irritating of the pet peeves as laid out here, excessively bloated TRP profiles. When you make your TRP profile, you have to choose a number of things. You have to write a description, and perhaps most importantly, you have to decide on your title. Your title is a quick summary of your character in a word or a phrase. It is not, I just want to confirm, it is not writing out every single role that your character performs, from what cats they may or may not own, to whether or not they are a sibling or a brother or a lover of chocolate. These things can be left out. These things can be discovered through roleplay. But more generally, if I hover over your character and the tooltip for your TRP blows up my screen with how large it is, it probably could do with a bit of reduction. We don't need your fucking biography in your IC information. And I just want to query why everyone feels the need to include the following in their TRP. Approachable. Loves walk-ups. Feel free to approach. Please approach me! LGBTQ+ friendly. I mean, has the community of Argent Dawn really gotten so toxic that if someone doesn't have this in their TRP, that they must be completely unapproachable queer-bashing homophobes that hate to roleplay with anyone and just stand around for the sake of it? Actually, yes, it probably has. Make sure that your TRP is well crafted, that it's nice and condensed, that it's a very short, quick glance at who your character is, and not a comprehensive curriculum vitae. This is acceptable. This one is not. Acceptable? Not acceptable. Now, the people that make these ridiculous TRPs are oftentimes the very same people that make the ridiculously long emotes. They're also probably the mysterious target market for the copious amounts of incest porn that you have on Pornhub.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my final plea to the server. If you do any of the 5 things that I've listed... Nope, that's it, I am fucking done.